Welcome everyone to another episode of IT Visionaries, and today we have the founder and CEO of Solo.io, Idit Levine. Idit, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, we're excited to have you as well. I think I worked in a similar industry, but before I make that assumption and conclude that, tell our audience, what is Solo.io and what does it do?
Yeah, so I started Solo.io like 3-4 years ago. And what we saw back then in the market is that there is a big kind of adoption, and people were migrating from monolithic to microservices. So what we recognize in Solo that the biggest problem that people will have is basically the network. What does it mean? If you have something that is a one binary and now you cut it to small pieces, the question is, how do you assemble them together to compose the application? So that's basically the problem that we saw. So what Solo is doing is basically, the way I like to describe it is application networking from edge to mesh. So it's basically trying to solve those problems of observability, security, as well as routing, right, and connectivity between everything that's going inside your data centers and anything that's going inside your cluster, per se, inside your data center. So that's kind of like in the nutshell what we're doing. But of course, it's a very complex thing. And if people are aware of the terms, it's basically what we're focusing on is API gateway as well as service mesh, which is kind of like right now united.
So I am but I did work at a company that previously did this. The company I worked for was named Pureport. It was acquired by Digital Realty Trust. And what we were trying to do was make it easier, as you suggested, for if your application, wherever your environment was, if you needed a microservice from any one of the public clouds to instantly throw up a network gateway, connect it, get your private data connected up very quickly. If you needed to transfer sunset locations, like there's all different use cases. But the idea was like it was going to be an API driven software tool where anyone could spin up a private secured network as they saw fit. Now, one of the things that I saw at the time, now this date is like 3 years ago, and I'd love to hear how the market has changed, was when we first started selling this service to people, a lot of people kind of didn't understand what they would use it for. They kind of thought to themselves, hey, well, I already have a VPN, I already have connectivity between my data center and the cloud. What do I need a tool to be able, or APIs to spin up new networks? I don't understand the use case. And truthfully, we had a hard time convincing others that there was a use case. It was a bit of a challenge until we finally found data center partners that saw the use case. How has that changed? Is it still that way to you? Are you still running into uphill battle where people don't understand why they need to be able to spin up networks on their own? Or has this changed, or is the demand changed? I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. No, so honestly, like every customer in Solo is an inbound customers, which means that they coming to us. And we seriously have 100, right? So you will see, and honestly, like we're exploding in terms of how many customers we have. So obviously, the explanation has been done. So now let's explain what are they looking for, because I think it's really, really important. So I think two things that is very important. The first one is API gateway. So by everybody moving to microservices, that means that what you need is most of the people are adopted Kubernetes as a platform to run those microservices. And when you're adopting those a platform, you need some ingress. You need something to basically be this point to kind of like have this request or coming into your services. And right now, the one that was extremely famous was maybe a Nginx as an ingress or something like that. But there was a huge, as I said to you, like all this, if you're looking at API gateways in kind of like an industry, there's nothing new about it. As you said, that was a while ago. That's an industry that's really worth. But I think that what this industry did not do very well is kind of like continuing being innovative. If you're looking at the technology that are running there, something like Apple Geocon or Nginx, this is a technology that it's like at least 10 years old, if not more, versus what you see right now in the data center, what we're doing, right? It's all the crazy microservices, right? Very innovative, scaling craziness and so on. The only thing that changed in that market of the API gateway right now, the way I see that, is the marketing, right? They're saying that right now they're an API for, the API gateway for microservices. So that's exactly where we started. And again, the reason we started there is because we saw that what really going to happen is that everybody will run service mesh, but we knew this market is not going to be ready. As you said, we need to educate it. So what we did, we took this building block, the proxy called Envoy, and said, how can we take that piece, which we know that is extremely important and will on, right? It will be the building block for all networking application in everywhere, and basically distract the market of API. So that's what we did. We started with taking the Envoy proxy and basically build an API gateway, the API gateway that you want to run, right? It's very innovative, it's very cloud native, declarative, and eventually consistent, and so on. So that's where we started, if it makes sense. But we kind of like piggyback on this amazing marketing that Google and the big guys doing about service mesh. That's actually helping us. They educated the market. Of course, we were part of the people that educate the market. And when the market said, yeah, I understand service mesh is something extremely important that I need to have, they basically discovered that we are the best. So they came to us. That was basically their.
So, when one of the drivers that we thought that was going to be one of the drivers we thought would be true that would create more demand for being able to spin up networks on demand was this idea of multi-cloud, which a lot of companies, I've forecasted. Multi-cloud's been talked about for a while. Now, at the time, the reality was there wasn't actually that much multi-cloud happening. People had access maybe to AWS and maybe they had access to GCP, but they weren't actually using any services between the two. Like they just basically used this silo, they used that silo, and maybe they did disaster backup between the two and they said, we're multi-cloud, right? The tools didn't have to talk to each other. Now, we had a hypothesis that was going to change, that people were now going to, because tools like this would enable best of breed service access. Oh, you want to run big data tables? Maybe you want to use BigQuery. Oh, you want to send data somewhere else because of one of the Microsoft products? You can do that as well. Are you seeing that now? Are we here, or are people still isolated to single cloud? And I'd love to understand, and if not, I'd love to hear some of the use case demands that are now driving the next wave of demand. Because you kind of mentioned before, like the big clouds educated the public. So what are they? So that's step one, education. Step two is utilization. Like people have to find significant use cases to say like, this is useful to me. I'd love to hear what your philosophy is on multi-cloud and also what is driving some of the adoption.
Yeah. So I think you are honestly, like you describe it very well. What we see is the same thing. So we still see people saying multi-cloud is the thing. Everybody want to be a multi-cloud. They don't like the locking into one provider, but honestly, the only thing that they're using is disaster recovery. And
so that hasn't changed.
Yeah, that didn't change dramatically. I don't think and as I said to you, we have a lot of customers. None of them is really using it as a multi-cloud. Maybe we have one customer that is huge and has 60 data centers and thousands of instances of STL. I would say that they had that. But but again, they're just taking the same application and basically, put it everywhere. They're not really, leveraging, specifically here you will do this, but then that's what called the other one. That's less happening. That's we see less. But I think it's still the dream. It's not the reality. Maybe.
So that's not here yet.
Yeah. Sorry.
So what is the current use cases? What are customers trying to unlock? Because it's one thing to want an API enabled tool to set up networking, but usually, like any other software, unless you have an actual use case for it, it'll fade to the wayside. It's a nice to have. It's not a need to have. But it sounds like you guys are a need to have. So what are people doing with this service?
Yeah, so as I said, the first one that basically coming, usually they're starting in the edge or the API gateway, the way they need it, they usually all moving to Kubernetes. They want to run API gateway that will be as innovative as what they're running there. They wanted the microservices and so on. That's exactly what our first product is doing, Glue Edge. So that's where they're starting. They need an egress somehow. They need these things to come. It's based on Envoy, which is the best proxy that exists today in the market. It's all API driven, very, very innovative. That's the thing that they want first. But usually they're not finishing there. And the reason is because now once you're kind of like feeling comfortable with microservices, you will have a lot of replica of them. You will run them at scale. You will have multi-clusters of them, right? What you will discover is that once a request coming into the data center, it's kind of like impossible to know where it is. Like you don't know where it's running, you don't know what's going on. If you have a problem, it's like there is a tweet that someone said that it's a murder mystery. If there's something wrong, you really don't even know where to see. So I think that one of the three problems that service mesh is solving, which is a very important, is that once this call is happening and hit one of the service, where did it go from now? What's going on? And I think it's attacking three things, as I said. Number one, you need to make sure that you will be able to move between those microservices and compose the request. Second of all, observability, big request by a customer. So they want to see what's going on? Where's the logs, right? You have a problem. Where is the log? Which microservice replicates it? So all those questions, I think it's where people need the observability, and service mesh is giving them very, very good visibility inside, kind of like zoom to the request path and everything that's happening there. And the last one, as I said, is security, mainly MTLS. So one encryption between those microservices to make sure that no one is coming in the middle. So again, that's what they need. Again, you will not do it if you have one application with 6 microservices, of course, right?
Yeah.
But our customers usually, just for example, has between 80 to 100 clusters in production. Each of them has an instance of a service mesh, and they need to manage that. And now, as I said to you, it's going all the way to 1,000 of them. And now the question is, if you're putting one service mesh who will give you this functionality, that's great. If you're one, you can actually feed the configuration. What's happening if you have thousands? And that's one of the things that our product is doing. It's helping you with a service mesh, as well as what's called the management plan, to configure and basically orchestrate those service mesh. How do they talk to each other? How do you configure each of them? How do you upgrade? How do you install them? And so on and so on. So that's basically an orchestration for service mesh, if it makes sense.
No, that is sweet. Hearing you describe all the use cases right now and what people are using it for. I liked how you just said like the data comes in, it's a murder mystery, no one knows where it came from. Yeah. You got to solve that. I mean, because that is definitely a truth of a lot of the guests that we have. They talk about, different CTOs all talk about the same things, which is they want to enable their developers to develop faster, which means they are going to be able to set up their own infrastructure to build their own test applications. Usually that is what needs to happen, even if it's at the feature level, because it's so easy now to spin up services to then say, like, at the feature level, this works. I can push it to prod to be part of the bigger product. And so they're all looking for ways to make this more feasible. Sounds like this is part of that toolkit that makes it more feasible to build test applications, test fast, validate, ship it.
Yeah, and more than this, I mean, think about it. Every time that we're basically doing a new technology, we're opening ourselves to a huge challenges, right? I mean, so yeah, you can go faster. You can do all the stuff that you just described. But then the question is that what's going on in operation day 2? What's happening when something is wrong? Right? All this question is exactly what we come to solve.
Yeah, makes total sense. Now, if we were to take a look at your, we looked you up obviously on LinkedIn. We tried to figure out your track record. So you were at Dell EMC, CTO, Cloud Management Division, and Office of the CTO. It looks like you left there in 2017. What created, I guess, the impetus, the spark for you to say, hey, I want to do this? Because did you see it in the marketplace? Like, hey, this is going to be like a big demand. Hey, I see an opportunity. Or was it just more of a passion that you just wanted to build this? I'd love to hear because, you're already arguably at one of the highest levels of you can achieve in your career. And then, so what gave you the spark to say, hey, I want to do this?
Yeah, honestly, it started a little bit different. So most of my life, I worked in a startup company. Yeah. And when I left the last one, I basically said to myself, okay, I definitely want to start one. I think I learned enough. I saw successful. I saw failure. I can feel that I'm really good at. And what I was really, really good always is, I don't know, like my boss in EMC, the CTO of all Dell right now, but it was the CTO of EMC. His name is John Ross. Basically, like to say that you can describe me as like you can lock her in a door in a room, give her Diet Coke because I'm addicted, and it's like an IP machine. I'm really good. I'm understanding the market really, really well. I know I can explain that. I just know what will happen before everybody, and I know how to get there very fast before everybody. So once I left the last startup company that I was, everybody told me you need to open your company. But I felt that, technology-wise, it's not my problem, but am I mature enough to open my own startup? And can I be a leader? And that's something that I wasn't clear at. So what I decided to do is that I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts. I had to, because my husband is a professor here. So I had to basically stay here. And I tried to figure out if I can go and learn from someone that's working in a big company, because honestly to God, I didn't work ever in a startup, in a big company.
Yeah, I saw.
Yeah, so exactly. So I wanted to see how is that going to be on the other side? For instance, the company that acquiring companies, or how does it work? Our organization is working on that side. And I thought that I would learn a lot, and that's exactly what happened. So I went to EMC, I worked for John, who, only phrases, this is brilliant, and learn a lot from him, but also learn how it's to be in a big organization, how it's working, what is good, and a lot of the stuff that are bad, how to be, I understand what is driven decision in the market and so on. And I think that once, after Dell got the merge with EMC, John asked me to stay until its end. But then when it's end, I felt comfortable enough to do that. And in EMC, I learned a lot. Like, for instance, I worked as a CTO of the cloud management division, and we created a dojo for cloud founders. So I worked a lot with Pivotal, but I also had my own kind of like advanced development group. And we did an open source project that was relatively successful about unicorn kernel. It's called Unique. And I worked a lot in the open source community, which taught me a lot, right? I went to conferences, I talked, I met everybody, and I saw Kubernetes. I worked a lot with Kubernetes. And honestly, after that, I felt that it's time, right? So I went and I started solo. So when I started solo and I got the money, honestly to God, I think that I'm almost sure that I actually pitch on serverless. And honestly, it wasn't matter what I was pitching on. What was important is that, to get the money, right? So I basically needed to pitch something that I knew that they're looking for. And then when I got the money, I looked at the market and said, okay, now what we need to do? And then it was very clear that this migration is happening. And in the beginning, I wanted to attack service mesh itself. I said, that's what I wanted to do. But it was also really clear to me that there's not going to be any money in this ecosystem for the next 3 to 4 years. So I said, okay, I can't really come to my investor and say, in 3-4 years, we're going to be a customer. So I said, okay, what can I do right now that will make my team extremely excited when service mesh will be there, but it's something that I can sell right now. And that's when I took the proxy as this piece and basically put it in an API gateway. And honestly to God, most likely you're using a product right now when you're using, your card, your credit card, or when you're using, buying a phone, and like we seriously everywhere right now. So it's really exciting.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's really cool. I'm listening to you tell the story and I'm piecing it together timeline. I'm like, okay, so she goes to big company, she gets big company experience. Check. She says, her peers say, hey, you can start a company. She's like, check. She says, what am I going to start? Well, I need to start something that I think is this. Check. Raise money. But then I see another market opportunity. Let's pivot and go to there. Check. Like that. So it wasn't, it's a unique thing because it sounds, I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like the real catalyst was you just wanted to start your own company because you came to the problem to solve. There's no question about it, but you didn't really have a problem. It doesn't sound like you knew exactly what problem you were going to solve when you first got started. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm really good in, like, if I want to find an idea, I know that I can do this very well. So I wasn't too worried about that. I think that the reason I wanted to start a company is because it's not because I wanted to start a company. It's because honestly, like, I felt that I can do better. Like I felt that working in a company, like I worked in one company that was acquired by VMware, had a blast there, Dynamic Op, really. But then, I moved. And since then I was kind of like looking for the place that I want to work, that it would be something like that. So honestly, I just felt that, I learned a lot from this career of what frustrated me, what wasn't happy about, what I was really happy about, and basically put all of this in solo. So the way solo is working, the culture in solo is totally different than other places. First of all, it's not my company, it's our company. And what I'm saying is that I will, I'm personally, most of my career was frustrated. Why is that? Number one, I felt that I'm pretty smart and sometimes even smarter than my boss, which was really bothered me, right? I wanted to learn from someone. And I felt that the person that above me not always can teach me. That's number one. And number two, I felt that a lot of the time they're making the wrong decision. So it took me a lot of time to understand that. It's not that they're making the wrong decision. It's just, I don't have all the data. If I will look in the market and I actually get all the data, right? If they will tell me everything, probably they make, most of the people are smart enough to make the right decision if they have all the data in front of them. So, something that, for instance, in solo is very, very drastic. First of all, is the best people is the management. I'm not, you know what I mean? They have to be the best because I want the people to want to inspire working for them.
So you mean on a skill level, like like if I'm a manager of a team, like if I'm in DevOps, I got to be the best at DevOps. If I'm in charge of security team, I got to be great at security.
Right. Because I want people to want to come work for you. And if I'm putting someone that is okay, you know how it is. Someone told me that you bring A+ team, they will hire A+. People you bring in B+, they will hire C+ because they are uncomfortable about their stuff. So you definitely want this team to be very strong. So that's number one, right? And number two that is really important is I'm never going to come to someone and say to him, hey, here's what I need you to do. Never.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm going to say. Here's what I know. based on my data, this is what Google doing, this is what LinkedIn is doing, this is why I think we should, this is what I saw those guys doing in the upper. So that's what happened. There is this quality piece. This person is going to do this, but this is what the other one wants. Based on all of this data, the technology, the market, the stuff that are less comfortable, like, the politics, all of this information, here's what I think we should do. What do you think? Right? And then we will discuss. And I have to say that that's working like a charm. The people, when they're working in Solo, they know why they're doing it and how they're doing it. And they are smart about that. And they are hungry to solve that problem because they understand why they're doing it. It's motivated them. So I think this is a unique approach that I didn't see a lot before. And I'm very happy that in Solo has that. And if you're looking at Solo, you will see the people is not leaving the market, the company. Because as I said to you, I think that in Amazon, they're saying that they are customer obsessed. This is
customer obsessed.
I would say that I'm employee obsessed. And the reason is because there is nothing more important to me than my employee. I want them to be, happy and to enable them. That's how I see that. If someone leaving, I fail, right? And the reason I'm not worried about the customer, because honestly, if your employee are so happy, the customer is happy too, because those guys care and it's part of their company and they will do everything to make that successful. So you kind of like getting it as kind of like a second order. So to me, it's like my people, honestly, like everybody is working Solo are so solid. They can work everywhere. They're getting offers every time. And they chose to be here and they're not leaving because my job is to make them happy. And that means everything, like paying them well, make sure that they can work on interesting stuff, teach them well, challenge them, make sure that they're not bored. And all this stuff, I think that that's the reason that they're not leaving. I'm pretty excited about that.
No, it sounds like it. I mean, well, I think the one cool thing about being on the dev, the way I think of it is when you develop tools for developers, the opportunity is endless because consumer products, because like I always think about this, like consumer products, it's very hard to predict what people will like, right? But developers are constantly getting roadblocked. Constantly. I want to figure something out. I can't figure it out. I want to do something. Can't execute it. Right. And so when I think of making tools for developers, it seems like a very logical thing because you yourself are are you hands on the code still?
No,
do you still develop and engineer?
I'm very, I know the architecture and details. I know exactly how it works in the details, but I'm not looking at code anymore. I'm honestly, I don't have time. I wish I could. But I'm very in the details of what and how and why and everything, right? I'm very involved. I'm basically still running the engineering team right now.
No, that's awesome. So, you're a developer tool and you're working with developers who are constantly using your product to, unlock services you mentioned before to develop their applications and move their companies or move their products forward. So that gives you a unique perspective on the next wave of problems as well. Yeah. Where do you see, I love, you don't have to, obviously you got this, you're working on solutions certainly, but what are some emerging problems or opportunities you're starting to see in the marketplace in regards to what developers need? Because, every guest we have on IT Visionaries is always working on something groundbreaking, right? Yeah. We all know that, right? But like in order for what they want to come true to happen, usually there's some type of infrastructure that needs to be in place for what their visions need to be. Yeah. So, and you're more on the infrastructure side, and I'm putting words in your mouth. Who knows? You're probably maybe spinning up new services that I don't even know about. But give us an idea of where do you see what is the next thing you think that developers and development teams are going to need to unlock to really advance their products, applications, businesses, whatever they're working on?
So it's a good question. So let's first of all, like I'm a big book, like I'm talking a lot with customers and, we have this very different approach in Solo. Basically, we are communicating to customers and working with them and make them successful on Slack. So each of our customers is a Slack channel. Yeah. That's giving a lot of, interaction between us, the engineering, the field engineering to those customers. So we're hearing a lot. Honestly, I think that there is the request that customer asked for, right? Which I think we should listen and we're building it and it's very important. But there's also the innovation and innovation is different, right? The customer will not come and tell me, I think Ford said it before, right? When he come and ask people, what do you need? They're always going to tell him a stronger horse. They will never say we want a car, right? So same thing, I'm kind of like thinking about it. There is this kind of like great channel that coming for the market and we need to do this because that's customers running in production. That's what they need. We need to give them. But besides that, there is where to push it. Where can we take it? What can we think about that they didn't even know that they need yet? Yeah. And I think that for that, I see a few things. So first of all, in general, what we're doing when we're using service mesh and API gateway, we're basically abstracting the network. That's basically what we're doing, right? We're saying, look, don't put it on the services itself. It's too complex. You don't sure that everybody, you kind of like embedded a tooling and operation code inside your microservices. Don't do that. Abstract that, right? Put it in a proxy next to it. Make sure that you will be able to declaratively change that. So that's basically what it is, service mesh and API gateway. When you abstract the network now, basically think about it. There is everything that we're doing is basically on the network. So we know any API calls. We know if there is a problem. We can see a lot of stuff. So I think that what we build right now is a platform. And in this platform, there is a lot of stuff we can do. Example, we can do chaos engineering, right? We can do a fault injection and kind of like create chaos engineering system. We can do a lot of debugging tools, right? Let's record these things that happen in production. If everything is good, we're just going to toast it. But if something wrong, let's kind of like take this recording and run it, attaching the debugger or something and make sure what's happening. So that's an example. I think that generally, the thing that, in my opinion, the future will be is that there's three things that I think in the market that are going to be very, very strong this year. Number one is WASM, WebAssembly. And WebAssembly in general is ability to extend stuff, let's say dynamically extend the binaries. A lot of people using it for the website, right? You want a better technology that will run faster than JavaScript, but you want to make sure that it will be very secure and not going to take your browser down, right?
Yeah.
And it's again, performance and so on. We generally took with Google together actually this WASM ID and put it inside a proxy. So now we can extend the proxy and our customer can basically customize it to whatever they want. So I think that's something that is very important. The other thing that I think it's very important is eBPF. And eBPF in general is the in operating system, like what I learned in my career is that as long as you're putting the solution as low in the stack as you can, it's the most efficient. That's the way it should be there. But sometimes you can't do that, right? You can't go so low. So what do? You improvise, right? Maybe you're doing it on layers, you're going higher on the stack to solve it. But ideally, you will want to solve it as closest to the hardware as you can. If you can solve it in the hardware, even better. So if you're looking at eBPF and the operating system in general, it's very hard to innovate there. And the reason is because if you're looking at the market, what we are running right now as an operating system, generally is something that was probably upstream 10 years ago, right? It's very hard to put something in Linux upstream. So I think that what eBPF is bringing to this market is the ability to basically innovate it. And eBPF is basically the ability to hook code to your operating system on events and basically run your custom code. So now you can do crazy stuff. I think that's huge potential. I'm very excited about that. The last one that I see catching up really, really well is GraphQL. And that's what we're hearing from our customer. Before that, people mentioned that. Now every call from our customer, what about GraphQL? What about GraphQL? What about GraphQL? So I think this is a very thing that catching up, and I think that that's an interesting problem that I don't think there is a good solution in the market yet for that. So I'm excited.
All right. So now because I've not heard too much about this. What is GraphQL? A query language for your API.
Exactly. So what does it exactly? So the idea is very simple. Right now, when you're actually putting a lot of those microservices, you have a lot of APIs. In the nutshell right now, if you wanted to create a UI for it or front end, usually every time that you want to get something for those services, the front end engineer need to come to basically the back end engineer and say, hey, I need you to expose that, right? Mm-hmm. Which is pretty annoying. And every time they need to communicate and it's very slow and so on. The idea with GraphQL is basically say, look, what if we will basically expose everything on those services, right? And give the UI person basically the ability to QL it, right? Basically query language that. And basically when that request is going to come, what the result of it, the resolver of it will know how to go and where you need to fetch the data from. So assuming it's kind of like a work, in the way I'm looking at it, it's like a workflow. You can come a request that you're saying, I want to get, all the customers that their salary is, all the employees that their salary is about 100, right? But assume that you have an HR or finance that know about the salary, and there is HR, let's say, that know about the employee. How do you match that? So what you need to do in that case is basically come to a backend engineer and say, hey, I need your help. I need to do this. Maybe I need to do 2 round trip. With GraphQL, you basically can make it very simple with one kind of like query language, give me all the salary of people that are one bar under, and he would know how to go basically to here, take all the employee, then go, take all the salaries and kind of like match them and return you all the result. So it's very easy to create a front end.
So is that stored on the client side then, right? Is that because
basically exactly?
So all the data I collect. So if I'm a company, I got data everywhere, right, from different products and services. I add GraphQL on. Now all my data fields or data points are now open for front end engineers that say, hey, I need access to X, Y, or Z.
It's basically another layer that the engineers is not going to go directly right now to those services. They're going to go always to your GraphQL server. And they will say, I want you to get all of this. And then your GraphQL know what does it mean for him to do. Oh, what you asked me is all those salary. I know that the resolver will tell me that I need to go to this one, return this, maybe do something, then go there and do this. And you as a UI person just basically QA, that's it. Just saying, that's what I want. Go get it. That's what
I can see 100% the interest in that. Because I'm thinking the way once you started describing the interplay between a front end engineer and a back end engineer, I was like, I've been at companies. That's exactly the problem. The person's like, you should be able to show this. Like, well, I need ID to open that. I don't get to open that gateway.
Right. Exactly. So I think that's something that people are really excited about it. And of course, now the question is, what is the next thing there? And the next thing there is that you have all those microservices, right? Do you want one GraphQL? Most likely what you would create what's called a sub schema. You want a small one for each microservices, and now you need to federate it somehow. How do you do that, right? So there's this notion of stitching and federation. So it's a complex market, right? But
because there's going to be companies that there's going to be certain things that they're never going to want to expose. Like that they won't want GraphQL to be able to access.
Right. So I think this is extremely exciting. And as I said, I mean, there is a lot of tooling, but also I believe that there is interesting stuff that we can do in order to make it better the way it's right now operated in the market.
Oh man, listen, the way you describe stuff, by the way, you were saying like you have a passion, very, very passionate. That comes through in your voice very, very clearly. We've had very engineering centric guests on our show before that it's not clear if they like engineering. When we talk to you, I feel like I definitely get like you are very excited about solving the next wave of problems. And I love that passion, energy in your voice. But before you go, it is time for the lightning round. The lightning round is brought to us by Salesforce Platform, the #1 cloud platform for digital transformation of every experience. Idit, this is where we ask you questions outside of the realm of work so our audience gets to know you a little bit better. Yeah. Are you ready?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So we got word that you played professional basketball. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I was. I was in Israel, not here. But.
All right. Well, all right. So Israel is where you played. Tell how did? I got to hear it. You played for how many years? Just tell us a little bit about playing pro basketball in Israel.
For a lot. So, I mean, I think I started playing since I was like first grade or something. I really like that. And I'm a very competitive person. I don't know if it shows here. I'm very competitive.
Yeah, we can tell. I can tell that you got some competitive juice for sure.
Win. So, I started working and playing very, very young, with boys. Just was having a fun, every time, I went back from school. And the second thing that I was doing is going to the court and playing with boys back then. And then after it, I started like playing in a real team in Israel in 7th grade, I think. And then, quite quick promoted to be, in the professional league. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, honestly, I was in high school and I was in a special high school that was a special class for athletes and people that are sport people. And, we flew all over the world and play, and it was a blast. It was a lot of fun and made a lot of good friends.
So when did you get involved more in engineering? I mean, I saw that you went at university you studied computer science, but when did you start getting involved in engineering? Did you like that always when you were a little kid, or did that interest come later?
Yeah, no, my passion was basketball back then. So I didn't do computer. I did like math. Like math was there was a people that like to do, I don't know, something on the free time. I was taking some math, question and having fun with this. It's really logic. So I really understand that. But when I finished the high school, I needed to make sure, in Israeli, everybody going to the army.
Yep.
having a basketball player. I didn't need to do much there, but I still were there. So when I finished, I needed to decide what I want to go learn. And I honestly, to God, did not know, right? So, all my brother and sister, they were in Israel army in computer. So they were already, working and having fun. And I kind of said, well, I don't know, but let's try. Why not? And then I basically just teach myself. It was just in the .com. So I basically find a job pretty easy, and just before even going to the university, just worked and got quite a lot of money. But then, my father who didn't, my parents did not finish high school. So they kind of like, you have to go to the university, you have to go to college. So I did went to college, and it was a blast. I learned that. I actually learned computer science and biology. So it was really even fun because I had those two. But I started working on it. Honestly, to get in the beginning, I wasn't that passionate about it because I was doing a lot more like front-end stuff, .com, everybody built websites. It wasn't that interesting to me. But I think that when I came here to Boston and I started working in Dynamic Op, that's when I find my passion. And I swear to God, I fell in love. Like, I remember me going to an interview and said, oh my God, that's what I want to do. And I was working like, since then, as I said to you, people is, I don't know, watching good TV, reading a book. I'm reading an article about cloud. I'm so passionate about that. So I think, yeah.
All right. So then when it comes to having fun away from work, besides reading about cloud, okay, I don't believe, what else do you like doing?
So first of all, my life is pretty full. I have 3 kids that I need to take care of.
Yeah, me too. I got 3 kids too.
Yeah. So that's
but
yeah,
you're busier than me though, because I know that.
No. 3 kids, we don't forget that most of, honestly, to God, the reason I knew that I can open my own startup is because our life, weren't that easy. We had 3 little kids, and we basically didn't have any help because we are here. Most of my family, all my family is basically in Israel. So, no help whatsoever. 3 little, very, very little kids. And 2 of them weren't, one of them is on the spectrum and so on. So it took a lot of energy for me. And I think that, after raising them and make that works, I said to myself, I don't think there's something I cannot do, right? I mean, how hard can it be now, right? And I think that that's what passions me. So I have 3 kids that are awesome, and I'm very excited about them. We just got a new puppy. I think we talked about it a little bit before. So he's putting a lot of my attention. I still playing a little bit basketball, not too much. What else? Yeah, I think that's basically my world. I don't have a lot of free time anyway. So it's not that I have time to feel.
Well, Idit, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come join us today on IT Visionaries. Thanks for sharing your career, what you guys are up to at Solo.io. And of course, thank you for sharing with our audience to let us know that, hey, listen, if you play professional basketball in Israel, you can still become a technological software founder. Your story is awesome. I love your passion. The way you talk about solving these problems just fires me up. I don't know what you're talking about half the time, but I'm just saying, like, if I did, I'd be like, I want to work for you.
Yeah. No, there's one thing that I want to say, if you don't mind, before I'm like,
yeah, go ahead.
So I think you asked me a good question in this show. It's, what is Solo doing? And I think that, I can explain you, right? But honestly, to God, to say that Solo is a service mesh company is like saying that Amazon is selling book online.
Yeah.
That's where we're starting.
It's a small part, right?
Exactly. What we have right now is an amazing team that can do everything. And whatever interesting in this market, we will go and attack because, we just want to be the best. So I don't know if this is good description, but if you want to know, what are we doing in Solo, we're having a blast with technology. So.
Yeah, it sounds like you haven't even really started, right? Because if Amazon started as a book company, they weren't going to be a cloud. Like, I don't know. Did they know they were going to be a cloud company? Of course not. They didn't know the cloud existed, right?
No,
we're selling books.
Exactly. So, it will be exciting.
No, I'm looking forward to seeing how the company develops over the next few years. Who knows what you guys are going to build with this problem-centric mindset you guys have. And it sounds like very limitless in where you can go and develop engineer solutions. It'll be exciting to watch the journey.
All right. Thanks so much.